Welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program. Today we will be flying the 8th iteration of our high-flying rocket, which is jostling about on the launch pad, which is always a little terrifying. We've added some more oomph to help get us into orbit. Not that it's terribly necessary, but with the weight we have on here and how close the fuel tolerances were last time, I'm hoping for just a little bit more this time around to put us better in a green zone. I don't know how much the 4 rockets are going to add, and to complicate our scientific approach to this, I've also thrown nose cones on all of them. So I'm hoping to get another 1.5 to 2 kilometers out of them, but I'm not really sure because of the weight the rocket already has. That said, we've also added our newest scientific experiment to this rocket. We have literally oodles of our new seismic accelerators scattered around the ship. These will hopefully allow us to garner the I think it's 288 no 300 No, yeah, 288. We need 288 science this time around in order to unlock our next tier of scientific experiments. Although not necessarily the route I want to go, it would be cheaper to grab 2 of the lower level tiers practically than it is to grab the next scientific experiments. But that will allow us to just finally, next time we hit an area, we can just run all of the experiments, and we don't have to keep revisiting the highlands, the grasslands, and whatnot. So that will be a boring set of flights to do, a boring set of flights for you to watch, but necessary science nonetheless. So without further ado, I believe we'll get this mission underway. Jebediah doing his double dance, which we have learned is not necessarily the token of success, indicator of success. But here we go. We'll start off with the one under our ladder, because that'll be hard to get later. We'll log our seismic data. Boop. Toggle that display. And we'll get our throttle up ready, and we will launch, and away we go. To about 83 when our engines cut there, so pretty good. 65 was our hold. It did rotate us a little bit, so we'll have to use some extra pitching controls to get us over that 90 degrees, but that's not a big deal. Chomping at the bit, I started that a little early anyhow, but that's okay, because I finished it a little late. extraction rooms have returned to enable us to better use our solar panel props to stand ourselves back up. Coming up on 100 here. $11.08. That's funny to me. All right, so here we go. Setting ourselves up here. We'll execute this in just a minute. Remember, we want to, as soon as we come around the other side, we're going to want to stop and jettison those extra engines. So we do have extra fuel in them. That's okay. So there we are. So I feel we're in a better fuel position now than we were last time. Not, you know, much different, but hopefully enough to push the threshold of us taking off. We'll have just that little bit more fuel left in our lander, so that, I mean, it was just really close. We had less than 10 units of fuel when we returned last time, and we were going very, very fast. And because of the approach that we had to take due to us having so little fuel, you'll remember that poor Jebediah exceeded 15 Gs, was liquefied into a pool of jelly. It took a little while to put him back together. But, you know, this is the Kerbal Space Program, and he was more than willing to launch once he had a structure again. That right there looks like a pretty convincing hit. If we can bring that up, we might be able to land on the poles. Nope. We'll accept that track. Moon encounter 4 hours, 7 hours, so that gives us roughly 2 hours and 50 minutes to set up a maneuver to find a place we haven't landed yet. So that will be the plan. Let's get our craft in position and we'll fast forward ahead here. And see our 2 landing sites. Our 2 rockets rather, floating below us. A mere 30 kilometers above the surface, so definitely about to crash. We totally missed our launch zone there. I got too caught up watching our boosters and looking for the moon to do it manually instead of by the computer. That is a much different approach, but it's definitely going to hit the moon, so that's what I'm going to go with. It'll hit it a little later, I won't get there as soon, but that's never really been a concern for me. And away we go, leaving our descending node behind. So it looks like I am on track to revisit a landing site I've already had. Odd. believe I might have landed there before. Let me check. We've landed on the East Crater, the Midlands, and the Northwest Crater. Let's go ahead and get into position just in case. I believe that is the Farside crater. Oh, we're drifting away here. So I think that would be an okay place to go at 171 meters per second. Change, coming up awfully quick. Sorry, I had to consult my astrogation charts, as a certain hero from a different galaxy would say. That looks pretty good. 24 seconds. Looks like we should actually be okay to just execute that. We're also going to go ahead and deploy our solar panels now, so we don't forget. So a nifty little thing there. Moon rotates this way. So we might need one more adjustment. We're coming in pretty steep, so it should be okay. With the moon's rotating, we probably want our final goal to be closer to here. Oh, and once again, I can't create maneuver nodes. Curses. We still have about half of our fuel left. Which will be good. It'll really help us during our descent. So that again, hopefully we will have plenty of fuel left in our lander. I'm going to say that's basically what I want. Let's get spun around retrograde. No, you know what? We're going to stay where we are in case that is no longer in the green zone as we get closer. I don't know why I'm using the green zone so much today. It just seems like a phrase that works. Looks like we are definitely going to head for this crater here. Now we'll go ahead and spin around retrograde. Possibly. Oh. There we go. Fall towards the body a little bit. Got that EVA in. 8 kilometers up. We're coming in awfully fast. This is going to be close. Should be okay, but it's going to be close. Drop our gear. Let's go ahead and turn on our landing lights. Let's go ahead and retract our panels. So let's retract our panels, thank you. We're awfully close here. We're going to get this down to about 0, and that's when we're going to jettison rockets here. Much more maneuverable. Remember, 12 meters per second is what we can land at. 25 meters. 50 meters. 80 meters. 120 meters, 170, 200 meters above. Got a lot of sideways movement here. A lot of sideways movement here. Hold it, hold it. Hold it. Alright, we've landed. We've actually landed this time for the first time ever, which is pretty exciting. Jebediah with a content smile, knowing that yes, this was it. 200 meters away from our debris there. Let's go ahead and check our fuel reserves. We used 17.5 or 17.8 units of fuel. I think that is more than last time, oddly enough, but we're standing up, getting out of here. We're not going to have to do the crazy slingshot across the surface. All in all, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead, and this one already has data in it, so we'll take a second sample. It detected a minor quake in the surface. Excellent. That's worth 80. Toggle the display. We're going to be jerks and just grab a second one while we're here. I mean, we have so many of them. So double will greatly reduce the returns, but that's okay. We're going to log the temperature. Just go ahead and grab our science bay. Let's go ahead and grab our mystery goo. We're going to extend our ladder. We're going to grab our crew report. Let's do our EVA. I do like the light patterns. Just kind of the way it worked out. I can't take a whole lot of credit for that. I mean, I placed them so that I'd have good visibility, but you can actually see that the legs hit the rings of all the corners, which is pretty cool. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take our EVA report. Dust is getting everywhere. We're going to take our surface sample. Let's go ahead and plant our flag. This is the Farside crater. Pretty exciting there. Oops. For half an instant, I had the thought of me jumping too high and bumping into the top and knocking the rocket over, and where our solar panels were extended, how awful that would be. We're going to turn off our lights because they are just eating juice. Not that, I mean, we got the solar panel, so it shouldn't be a big deal, but still good practice, good practice. Now, when we lift off, we're going to want to lift off in a standard fashion of how we would normally leave Kerbin. We'll lift off 90 degrees, head that way. Puts us in an orbit, and hopefully on our first pass is when we'll do our acceleration. And yeah, so that was very successful. I'm excited about that. It was a little hairy when we picked up all that lateral speed. We're leaving some debris for future generations to enjoy. Just how much of that debris exists, out of curiosity. Looks like we got some batteries, and I'm going to assume those are empty fuel tanks. The ones with fuel are most likely the ones that exploded. Very cool landscape around us. Actually, quite the cool landscape around us. Nice little site. And with that said, without further ado, let's get off this rock. So we're going to retract our panels in case anything should happen. And away we go. We're going to pull up our gear. Looking very excited now. Coming up on 20 kilometers, we're going to start heading parallel to the surface. Help us widen out this arc. I don't need to be much more than 20 kilometers off the surface in order to establish an orbit here. Five, four, three, two, one. Cut the engine. That looks pretty good. 200 is a bit, but that's all right. Not really anything I can do about it. Two minutes until that happens. At the minute mark, we'll fire the engine. I don't quite trust that it says that this burn will only take 1 second. So we're gonna go with our gut on that one instead. Now I am excited for when we go to Midmas because I'm trying to make sure I have enough parts to do it, but my ideas for how we're going to hit the various surfaces and biomes is it's going to be a lot more interesting than our current approach of launch a mission, land at a site, go home, launch a mission, land at a site, go home. I would like to have a mothership orbiting Minmus, loaded mostly with RCS fuel, and have a lander craft that can drop down to the surface, run its experiments, come up, dock, transfer its experiments over to the mothership, and then refuel RCS fuel, go down, land, and do that, hit 2 or 3 sites, and do it that way. Much more fuel efficient, much more time efficient, and hopefully the design challenge will be a fun one. I really do love doing rendezvous, and it has solely been just the parts available to me and the desire to drive science in the fewest number of flights that has kept me from doing more rendezvous stuff in these videos. Just waiting till we get to the apoapsis to conserve as much fuel as possible. Every drop counts. So we'll go ahead, get rid of that as we come around the back side. Um, hmm. This is going to be a longer trajectory. Much longer. But I think this is going to be the safer route because it's going to prevent me from being recaptured by the moon. So I think we're actually going to wait until we get to here to do it. So we'll do one full revolution of the moon, come back, and fire when we get, I mean, in terms of the size of the body we're orbiting, when we're close enough it makes no difference to over our landing site, we'll go ahead and launch. That's going to be my plan. I believe that's in previous explorations, the way I have left the moon so as not to... Nice landing site there. So as not to get recaptured, because that's really annoying. Granted, this is also the smallest amount of fuel I have ever had to land on the moon. Normally, I used to have, if I was going to do it where I would land and then take off with the same rocket without some sort of parent craft around the moon, I would always have 4 external tanks, and we would touch down using only those 4 tanks, and instead of landing gear, we'd land on those 4, springing out of the side. And then when we take off, any fuel left in them would start us, and then we'd fire up the main engine and drop them. That's usually the way I go. We don't have the launch vehicle components to do something like that right now, which is why I haven't. And also, in terms of like the mothership idea, I'm sure I could work out something right now, but without the mainsail engines, it's just a lot harder and logistically not as sound, I don't think, as this method. So I'm happy with it. I just I'm not used to operating on such close parameters without a buffer. But it's good. I mean, it's definitely improved my skill a little bit here. I'm definitely more careful um, in terms of choosing which maneuvers to do. I know I blow by a lot of them for these videos, but I feel that if I were to really buckle down and set up my maneuvers properly, I could cut out some of this fuel, whether it be the monopropellant that I'm using to get out of orbit, or whatever the case may be. As part of a side rambling here, because I realize I think I've been quiet for the last 10 minutes. It's hard to tell what my internal monologues are and what my monologue to Jeb here is. But it reminds me a lot of when I was first learning to memorize music. You'd play a piece over and over and over again, and you'd think to yourself, can I play it without music? And the answer was almost always no. No, I can't do that. So you'd go ahead and so let's deploy our solar panels here so we don't run out. The answer was always no, I can't do that yet, I'm not ready. But if you take the music away and just kind of force yourself through it, it might not be perfect, but more often than not, I was surprised by how much I retained. And with some people that I played with, just encouraging them to put their music away and just try to trust themselves. It really is amazing how much of that you retain. Likewise, in terms of playing this game, I would get back to Kerbin and I'd have extra fuel and whatnot, and I'd say, well, maybe I can take out that tank. But then when actually designing the rocket to go out on my next mission, I'd be sitting there going, nah, I don't think I'll be able to do it. I got lucky that time. Even though every single launch I'd have 3/4 of a tank of extra fuel, it never felt that way. So this has been very cool for that. My first real experience with it was when I was trying to design a rocket that operates as the Apollo program did. And I do have a video of that. I didn't necessarily make it to distribute. It was more for me to review, see when I started rolls, things like that, in order to get better at flying not only that rocket but other rockets, to see what works, to come up with an optimal approach, which is one of the reasons why you'll see I usually start my roll at 12 kilometers to get off of Kerbin. That's just after playing and reviewing and whatnot. That just works best for me. There might be a more optimal way to do it. I know that with drag, you should actually watch your speed at different altitudes in order to really maximize fuel usage. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, so I mean, maybe I'll throw the Apollo thing up, but the main point I was trying to make is just that doing that and feeling constraints of what I was allowed to bring for fuel and supplies definitely made me better at the game. Alright, so that exhausts all of our monopropellant. We still have 12 meters to go, so we'll fire up the engines. 12 meters per second to go. Don't want to mess up my units there. Somewhere there's a physics major, or what I think of as my chemistry professor, just crying out in agony every time I drop units. So there we are. With that, we'll begin our journey home. A long journey it shall be. We're actually going to make it even longer to save on fuel. We're gonna go around once and then, oh well, maybe not. For some reason it's given me this is 12 hours and this is 20, but I don't think that's accurate. I do not believe I'm going to change my direction around the planet. We don't want to come in quite as hot as we did last time. .36 looks good. And just 260 meters per second. I have plenty of fuel for that. That's not a problem at all. I have about 2/3 of my fuel remaining. So we'll definitely be able to beat that 10 units that we had left last time. So we will say goodbye to Moon for now. We will certainly be back. Hoping that we garnered the amount of science we needed to unlock the next set of experiments. And suddenly that makes sense why it's giving me it to that, because it thinks that I'm going to come in after the apoapsis, which very well could be. Make sure I've escaped the moon before I go slowing down. Alright, so if I do this same maneuver, what was it, 280? Looks good. .62 units of fuel. .50 units of fuel. So yeah, 3.5 times the amount of fuel that I had from the last mission left over. So that will be, I'll attribute some of that to the 4 solid boosters I added in the beginning, along with the aerodynamic cones. We had a good landing for once. A little sad that we had to break tradition, but it's a tradition I'm okay with breaking, you know, crashing and all. I had actually tried to engineer a way to put a landing gear on the top of the craft to stand us up after that kind of what the heck did they call it? I think it's position 2, when the capsule would land during a splashdown. A capsule position 2 was over on its side. Position 1 is upside down, I believe is what it was. Might be the other way around. Anyhow, I was going to try to engineer a solution to that problem, but ultimately it didn't end up being necessary. And I don't know, every time I tried to put a landing gear in a place that would work, if it was functional, it looked sloppy, and if it looked decent, it wasn't functional. So I just decided to man up and try to land properly instead of try to engineer around my failure. and then I still failed anyhow, but I felt better about it. Still coming in very fast. Definitely going to be a lot of G's experienced. Oh, forgot I was in physical warp here. One advantage is that wherever we do land, we will be able to get a seismic reading, which will be pretty nice. Let's go ahead and pull in our solar panels. Since we're in darkness anyhow, they're not doing a whole lot, and they're just a liability. Try to break as little as possible on the ship during re-entry. I figure the more of it I can reuse, the cheaper it will be. And I believe the next update we're getting, which they tentatively said will come out at the end of this month, we will actually have money and be charged for the pieces that we lose. So being able to recover our entire lander here is going to be pretty important. You'll notice we have not quite climbed to the 15G mark yet. I mean, the night is young, but I'm hoping this is a much safer landing than that last terrible bout. Kilometers. I got mesmerized by the flames and Jebediah's dancing. I almost forgot that I do need to pay attention to my altitude so we don't die, especially where I don't quite know where I am. Magnificent fireball there. Kilometers. Let's go ahead and turn on those spotlights. Let's go ahead and drop our landing gear. You can see a little something over here. I don't know if it's visible with my recording options, but we're going to go ahead, we're going to bleed off some of this speed. always get nervous when I'm traveling over 100 meters per second before my parachute's open. I've had... Oh, that's the end of my fuel. I've had a few too many parachutes rip off a craft or have the bottom portion of a craft get ripped off. That's why I do over-engineer the parachutes. 4 is much more than this craft needs to actually land safely, but in order to make sure that if one gets ripped off, they don't all get ripped off. And actually a little risky with this design that I do have. I really like to have the parachute on the nose cone. One, it's a good parachute, and 2, it tends to hold tighter than the radial mounted ones, so that if something does happen and the craft gets sheared off, I still have a chance to save my crewmen. But the risk of running out of fuel is such that having a craft with a docking port where I could go rescue it and transfer fuel to it as an optimal strategy, as opposed to having to meet out with the craft, transfer the experiments over to a new craft, and then leave that large piece of debris floating around as kind of a backup strategy. So that said, it looks like this will be a very successful mission. We have our nice flower here as we come down. Somewhere on this massive continent. Looks like we'll have some nice grasslands, though, to garner some more seismic data. There we go. And with that, that should be the mission. $476 science garnered, which is awesome. We were looking for a total of 550. We got almost 200 more than that. Not enough to research a second set of science, but enough to get that last set of scientific experiments available to us. At least I believe those are the last ones. So let's see, we got our crew report from the Farside crater, EVA report from above the Farside crater, surface sample, EVA report in the crater, temperature scan, material study, mystery goo observation 1 and mystery goo observation 2, a seismic scan, netted 80 science, pretty awesome for that. Seismic scan from the launch pad for 6 science, not quite as impressive. Seismic scan from the Farside crater, our secondary return, giving us 7 science, still more than what we got from the launch pad. The grasslands was 6, temperature scan from the moon side, our second one, gave us nothing, and recovery of a vessel from the surface of the moon gives us 0.1 science. That said, we've got that. Let's go ahead and grab our last bit of scientific study here, which would be advanced science tech with our sensor array nose cone, which will be interesting to work in some vessels. I think we'll put it on the top where we currently have our docking port. I hope it's the right size. If not, we'll have to use an adapter to look silly, but if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. And of course our GravMax gravioli detector. So we'll research that, and that actually looks like that is the end of that tech tree. So there we go. We have 189 science left. We'll be able to garner more on our next flight. Hopefully we'll actually be able to garner roughly the same amount, another 400 and so. So if we can hit 411, we'll be able to knock 2 of these out of here. Most likely we're going to want to go after our nuclear propulsion in the hopes that it helps unlock this guy here. RCS fuel is a good one. for having an orbital space station. I don't really care about spaceplane parts, sadly. I'm not good at designing spaceplane parts. We haven't started launching probes yet because we're still doing a lot of manned science, which is funny. You'd think that you'd launch probes before doing manned science, but yet here we are. We will eventually want to do this, set up a couple of these to go to like Eve and Duna, gather some quick science to transmit back. Not as effective, obviously, as going there, but certainly a lot easier. Our ion propulsion, I have such a hard time getting ion propulsion to work for me. It works very slowly, so you kind of just have to sit and watch it. You can't accelerate time if you're throttled up. It uses a ton of electricity, so not something that I'm good with yet, so not something I'm going to go for right away. Large electrics, again, stuff that we don't really need for right now. And rover parts, it would be nice if our last moon landing did contain a rover, so that might be something to go for. Alright, that said, it's been a successful mission. We've gone a little over an hour. Sorry about that. Again, I don't think anybody watches these, and if you do, I'm assuming you fast forward. God, tell me you fast forward through them. But thanks for watching anyhow, and we'll see you next time.